A quick word on this week's sponsor, NordVPN, the fastest VPN on the planet. A VPN or virtual private network allows you to securely and safely use the internet with just a single click. With NordVPN, you can open up a world of new content from around the globe that may have been previously locked to you. Simply open the map, click on a location, and you'll be connected to the internet via that region in seconds. I find it really useful for watching TV series and films only available to stream in certain regions. Use the Threat Protection Pro feature to protect against malware, even when not connected to a VPN. When watching YouTube from a public Wi-Fi, with NordVPN, you can secure against man-in-the-middle attacks, where what you believed was a public Wi-Fi is actually an imposter accessing your data. It gives me a real peace of mind. With Dark Web Monitor, NordVPN constantly scans hacking communities and alerts you if your account passwords are leaked. If you'd like to support the operations room and make use of their fantastic services, please visit nordvpn.com/opsroom with 4 extra months. That's nordvpn.com/opsroom, and it's risk-free with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. It's just before 11 PM on the evening of the 24th of July 1943. A German long-range radar station in Ostend in Belgium reports contacts near the east coast of the United Kingdom 125 miles to the north. Another German radar station on the island of Texel confirms that a large number of aircraft have taken off from RAF bases in the Midlands and East Anglia. This information is quickly relayed to the nerve centre for the Luftwaffe's defence of the Reich, the underground central combat station in the city of Stade, one of 5 in Germany that has been nicknamed the Kammhuber Kino due to its resemblance to a massive movie cinema. General Lieutenant Walter Schwabedissen immediately orders all night fighter units in the Low Countries and northwest Germany to scramble and take position in their sectors of the Kammhuber Line, the integrated defence network protecting the western airspace of the Reich. Schwabedissen watches as his staff plots the incoming raid using white pins for the British aircraft, while green pins represent German interceptors taking off from their airfields. The Stade Control Centre is one of the most advanced in the world, and the fighter controllers are able to accurately assess the air situation with only a 60-second delay between updates. However, something is wrong tonight. The vanguard of the incoming raid continues south, but the tail end seems to be expanding as though the bomber stream is getting larger. Ground radar operators are now reporting thousands of contacts, which is soon corroborated by night fighter pilots watching their airborne Liechtenstein radar sets. General Schwabedissen demands answers, and the control centre is sent into a frenzy, as the panicked fighter controllers attempt to contact radar stations, listening posts, reconnaissance aircraft and ground observers in the hope of gaining accurate information. Luftwaffe night fighter pilots are given wildly diverging orders as the crisis deepens. One German pilot later said, "The radio reports kept contradicting themselves. Now the enemy was over Amsterdam, and then suddenly west of Brussels, and a moment later they were reported far out to sea. What was to be done?" In fact, the RAF has for the first time used a secret but simple technology codenamed Window, which is causing false readings on German radar screens. There is a good reason to use Window on this attack. The target is the largest port in mainland Europe, and one of the most heavily defended cities in the world, Hamburg. This is the opening attack of Operation Gomorrah. Over 4 nights and 2 days, RAF Bomber Command and the USAAF 8th Air Force will smash Germany's second city. Under the command of Air Chief Marshal Arthur Harris, the RAF's Bomber Command is finally making its mark on the war. The success of Operation Millennium, the first ever 1,000 bomber raid on the city of Cologne, marks the turning of a corner and ascendancy for Bomber Command, as Harris seeks to devastate the German war economy and maybe even win the war through aerial bombing alone. In March of 1943, Bomber Command launched a new 4-month campaign against Germany's industrial cities in the Ruhr Valley. The Battle of the Ruhr, as it came to be known, is considered a success by Bomber Command, as many German cities have been attacked without unacceptable losses to the aircrews. The RAF's confidence rises further as the US 8th Air Force enters the fight, although its bomber fleet has not yet arrived in large numbers. Following the Ruhr campaign, Harris now turns his attention to what had been the original target for Operation Millennium, Hamburg. With improved navigation capabilities offered by G and the new H2S airborne ground scanning radar set, the city is an obvious target for Bomber Command. In addition to being the largest port in Europe, Hamburg is home to significant war industries, including shipyards, oil refineries, engineering and electrical workshops, and asbestos factories. The importance of Hamburg is not lost on the Americans either. The United States Army Air Force is attempting to conduct precision strikes by day, and is keen to hit aircraft engine factories and the U-boat shipyards in order to support the Allied navies fighting the Battle of the Atlantic. Nonetheless, the city will be a tough nut to crack. Hamburg is defended by 54 heavy and 26 light flak batteries, and 22 searchlight batteries. A ferro-concrete flak tower defends the city centre and the harbour, with 16 massive 128mm flak artillery pieces. Furthermore, 20 more 128mm guns and 48 105mm guns can be dispatched to the city by rail on short notice, while concrete flat barges on the Elbe River add to Hamburg's defensive firepower. The RAF has suffered heavy losses in previous raids on the city, leading the commanding officer of 57 Squadron to begin briefings on other targets with, "Now boys, the defences are nothing like as good as Hamburg, so you should be alright." These anti-aircraft defences are coordinated within the Kammhuber line, which relies upon a complex network of radar stations, radar-guided flak batteries, and listening posts to determine where to dispatch night fighter squadrons for interception. However, Harris decides that now is the time to unleash the secret weapon he's been aching to use. Crewmen aboard bombers headed for Hamburg will shove packages of paper strips coated with metal foil on one side out of their aircraft, where the packages then disperse. Codenamed Window, these strips will hopefully scramble German radar screens, giving false detections of phantom aircraft, and making it nearly impossible to determine the direction and strength of the incoming raid. An early form of what we know today as chaff, Window was developed in early 1942 by Welsh researcher Joan Curran, and has been a closely guarded secret for fear that the Luftwaffe would use the same tactics in their own air raids. However, by mid-1943, it has become obvious that the Luftwaffe can no longer mount serious attacks on British cities. With this knowledge, Air Chief Marshal Harris decides Operation Gomorrah will be the first use of this simple but potent technology. The RAF's bomber crews are still apprehensive about their mission despite the introduction of Window. Bill McCrea is piloting an Avro Lancaster in 57 Squadron, and later described the tense minutes before takeoff. "I felt physically sick. It wasn't what was happening at the time that was the problem. Whenever anything happened you could fight it. You had things to do. It was the thought of what might happen. That was the worrying thing." The main force, composed of 347 Avro Lancasters, 246 Handley Page Halifaxes, 125 Short Stirlings, 85 Vickers Wellingtons, and 11 de Havilland Mosquitoes, began taking off from 42 RAF airfields at 10 PM. The process is smooth and only one aircraft is unable to take part. All bomber squadrons are airborne within an hour, and the groups make their way across the North Sea individually to disguise their ultimate destination. Guided by G navigation, these groups will converge on a single point codenamed Position A, 80 miles from the German coast, and form into a massive bomber stream. Then, they will begin the final leg of their journey to Hamburg. While this is happening, 11 Mosquitoes will perform harassing raids on Kiel, Duisburg, Bremen, and Lübeck. The RAF could not have picked a better night to launch an ambitious attack. Flying conditions are perfect, and there is limited moonlight. Furthermore, the Luftwaffe's response is lacking even before the deployment of Window. They have begun to have success in interfering with G signals, but their jamming efforts tonight are too late and ineffective. 45 bombers are forced to jettison their bombs and return to England due to mechanical malfunctions, but the 6% turnback rate is average for a raid of this size. 4 patrolling Bf-110 night fighters are encountered, and 2 Lancasters lost in the ensuing combat, but these are the only successful intercepts of the night for the Luftwaffe. Even poor weather back in England is proving fortuitous for the RAF. 25 Mosquitoes had been slated to attack German night fighter airfields ahead of the bombers, but fog grounds all but one aircraft. The lone Mosquito of 25 Squadron shoots down a German Ju-88 night fighter before returning to base, but the lack of the usual harassment raids against German night fighter fields further confuses the Luftwaffe's leadership. At 12:20 am, the groups converge on Position A right on time, and form up into 6 waves. 5 minutes later, crewmen begin shoving window bundles out of the hatches. Pilot Officer Clark of 12 Squadron later recalled, "Sitting in the wireless position with just the glow of a tiny lamp and watching a steady stream of those little strips streaming past me and disappearing into the darkness. A bit like watching a shoal of river fish darting along in murky water." The effect of window is immediate. Within just 20 minutes of deployment, the bomber stream passes through 3 of the Kammhuber Line's main night fighter boxes without a single Luftwaffe night fighter to stop them. One German pilot later recalled, "I was picking up targets that didn't exist anywhere. We kept finishing up behind a target, but there was never the slipstream of the bomber." The Kammhuber Line has been broken through, and the bomber stream now has a clear run at Hamburg. Leading the formation are 6 Pathfinder Lancasters of 8 Squadron. At 12:40 am, the navigators aboard these aircraft spot the outline of the German coast on their H-2S ground scan radar sets. The bomb aimers release the first of 3 target indicator flare munitions. These munitions ignite at 3,000 feet above sea level and bathe the sky in a brilliant yellow colour, which is visible for miles. The first TI marks the beginning of the correct route for the bomber stream to follow, and signals to the pilots to tighten up the formation. Pathfinder backup aircraft flying with the main formation will continuously drop more of these TIs to mark the route for the rest of the aircraft. However, these flares also attract German night fighters. A DO-217 shoots down a Halifax in the 5th wave, but is then destroyed by defensive fire from another aircraft. The bomber stream makes its final turn 27 miles from the city over the village of Kellinghusen. Here, some aircraft release packages of propaganda leaflets, while 6 Wellingtons split off from the main group and head for the mouth of the Elbe River to drop naval mines. The main force is only 7 minutes from the target. Meanwhile, the 630,000 residents of Hamburg have been preparing themselves for a long night after the air raid sirens sound at 12:33 am. State Secretary Georg Ahren broadcasts an urgent message over the radio. Many aircraft approaching Hamburg. The first bombs will fall in a few minutes. Everyone must go to their shelters. All outside lights are shut off except for the flak battery's massive searchlights, which sweep the skies looking for RAF bombers. The 40,000 strong Hamburg Fire Service is put on the highest alert, unaware they are about to be tested like never before. However, this is still not enough to rouse many from their beds after months of false alarms and sleepless nights. Those who work in the civil services begrudgingly report for duty. Traugott Bauer Schlichtergrom is a young flak helper in a northern suburb who is called to his anti-aircraft position. He remembered, "One of my friends said, 'What nonsense, always these alerts and nothing happens. It's stupid to lose so much sleep.' We soon heard the humming of engines like 1,000 bees." Lieutenant Walter Luth is a doctor in the Kriegsmarine, whose patrol vessel is refitting at the shipyards when the bombers arrive. Suddenly, there were yellow torches in the sky and the murmuring of engines coming ever nearer. Red and green marker bombs followed. It was so bright that one could have read the newspaper without difficulty. These flare bombs are being dropped by the Pathfinder Lancasters of 83 Squadron. Yellow target indicators are released first, to once again light the way, followed by red ones to mark the specific target areas, and finally green markers to confirm that the red flares are in the correct target area. The Hamburg Police Headquarters records the first aircraft noises over the city at 12:51 am, while German heavy flak batteries open fire. However, window has blinded Hamburg's anti-aircraft defences as well. Operators for the radar-guided guns find their displays scrambled, making it impossible to train on any target. Some batteries fire randomly into the droning sounds above, while the others remain silent. Bomb aimer Leonard Bradfield from 49 Squadron was sceptical that window would work, but is now a convert. "We were absolutely delighted. It was the only time on any bomb run I was able to have 20 seconds completely unimpeded, without being stalked by flak." The target area for tonight is the city centre and the shipyards on the other side of the Elbe River. However, not all of the Pathfinders have arrived on time. The target marking begins at 12:51 am, but most of 83 Squadron is 8 minutes behind. When they arrive at 12:59 am local time, many of the flare bombs have already burned out, and some Lancasters do not drop their target indicators in accordance with their training. Despite this, 4 groupings of 39 markers are still burning when the first wave of 151 Lancasters arrive overhead just after 0 hour of 1 am. The dock area south of the Elbe is marked accurately, while another grouping falls in the eastern half of the city, and 2 more in the western borough of Altona. In this first attack at least, the city centre area of Hamburg will be spared. At 1:02 am, the attack begins. Approaching from the northwest, each Lancaster releases a massive 4,000-pound cookie bomb, 4 1,000-pound conventional bombs, along with dozens of incendiaries. Some carry an 8,000-pound blockbuster bomb. Leonard Bradfield remembered, "It was a brilliant night. You could see the ground absolutely crystal clear. You could see the outline of the city, and you could also see where the markers had gone down. To bring her up in line directly over the target took some 20 seconds straight and level. Then we let the bombs go." Releasing the 4,000-pound cookie bombs causes the Lancasters to leap as it sheds their immense weight. Although the explosions caused by these conventional bombs are so large that they can be seen from the bombers, it is the incendiaries which will cause the most damage. Within minutes, the following waves can see a yellow glow beginning to emanate from Hamburg. The civilians on the ground are now acutely aware that this is not a false alarm. Many refuse to believe their city would be bombed until it is too late. In previous pinprick raids, many of Hamburg's citizens would stand on their roofs or in their doorways to watch the spectacular display of anti-aircraft fire, despite repeated warnings from city officials. Their learned complacency now proves to be deadly. 16-year-old Gotthold Saltfadel is a flak helper on the roof of the massive flak tower in the city centre, who remembered when the first bomb fell. It was very near, as if on command everyone charged away from the guns and into the entrance of the bunker, knocking our lieutenant to the floor in the process. He screamed at us dreadfully and called us cowards. All across the city, those who had previously gawked at air raids run for the nearest shelter along with their families. Window continues to blind the German defences, as sporadic flak fire fails to come close to most of the bombers. Sergeant Steve Bethel of 467 Squadron later told the historian Martin Middlebrook, "I felt reasonably safe over a target for the first time in my short operational career." Flight Lieutenant Pentoni of 429 Squadron said, "All the crew were delighted. My bomb aimer said that his bloody hands were frozen from dropping window, but it was well worth it." Rudolf Schurig is manning a flak battery in the northeast of the city and quickly realises something is wrong when his crew stops receiving radar information. "We felt like someone who has been given a rifle to defend himself, but who is blindfolded at the same time." The anti-aircraft fire is so pitiful that some British pilots treat their first run on the target as practice before circling around to bomb more accurately, sometimes even against the rest of the stream. The German defenders on the ground light decoy flares in the empty fields around the city, which manage to attract the bombs of some RAF aircraft. Other crews release their munitions too early, causing what is known as bomber creepback, which causes the rest of the aircraft to follow this example. Later missions and aim points will be planned with creepback assumed. However, the majority of the stream remains on target, and most of their bombs fall on Altona and the neighbourhood of Eimsbüttel. Johan Johansson is in Altona and can see his own house from his flak battery. With dogged fury, we remained at our guns, exposed to the raging force of the attack. Every now and then I cast another look over towards my house. I skipped a breath. A column of fire shot up high. Everything was in flames. Seconds later, an incendiary bomb impacts right next to Johansson's flak gun, which sprays him with shards of glass. Despite injuries to his face and the knowledge that his wife and son are sheltering in the cellar of their now burning house, Johansson dutifully remains at his position. The raging fires breaking out across the western half of Hamburg are beginning to merge into large infernos, which is producing unusual meteorological events. One resident recalled being unable to walk in the middle of a street due to gale-force winds pushing against her. Professor Franz Thurmer is watching the raid from the safety of his house in the outer suburbs when rain begins to fall. Termer later explained, because of the hot air, which rose and then cooled and condensed in the upper atmosphere, a downpour fell over Hamburg. The rain mixed with the ash and created a thick black mud, a mixture which covered everything, distorted people's faces, and matted their hair. These strange weather phenomena failed to produce the worst possible result for the people of Hamburg, a firestorm, which could reduce entire neighbourhoods to cinders. The citizens don't realise it, but the city has been lucky this night. Window continues to cause chaos for the defenders well into the raid. German anti-aircraft batteries fire around 50,000 flak rounds on the night of the 24th to the 25th of July, but only managed to bring down 3 British aircraft. Tragic for their crews, but a figure that wildly exceeds Bomber Command's expectations. The complete lack of flak protection around Hamburg is further compounded by the lack of night fighter interceptors. RAF crewmen report seeing only a handful of Luftwaffe fighters lingering on the outside of the bomber stream. The German pilots either too disorientated or too afraid to engage. The uncontested British bombers continue to pummel Hamburg as the last wave drop their ordnance. 6th Group is the last formation to bomb the city and later reports the whole of the west of the city had become a mass of raging fires with black smoke rising to 19,000 feet. The fires have become so massive that the ominous glow is spotted by RAF mosquitoes flying a mission 140 miles to the south. The attack is over by 2 AM on the 25th of July once 6th Group finishes its bombing run. Bomber Command has just set a new record by dropping over 2,300 tons of bombs on Hamburg, beating the previous record of 2,000 tons. The last bombers continue south before turning west to make their journey home. Only now do Luftwaffe night fighters spring into action, most of them attracted to Hamburg by the towering flames like moths to a lamp. The bomber stream is now visible to German radar again, without any window protection on the leg home. 6 aircraft are lost to night fighters on the way back to the UK, which represents half of the total casualties on this mission. However, it is far too little and too late for the Luftwaffe. The attacking force begins landing back at their bases at 4 AM. Following debriefing with intelligence officers, the tired RAF crewmen are served an all-you-can-eat breakfast of eggs and bacon before retiring to bed. Despite their exhaustion, the raid's success bolsters morale considerably. Meanwhile, Hamburg continues to burn as the fire brigade struggles to deal with the flames. Many water and gas mains have been cut by the bombing, which complicates rescue efforts. The control room of the air protection leader is also set aflame, which forces the staff to flee the area. The city-appointed Nazi governor, Karl Kaufmann, is terrified that the RAF will return the following night and easily spot the city if the fires are not contained. Kaufmann declares a state of emergency to contain the fires and activates the SS and Gestapo to ensure firefighters deal with the most endangered areas. Despite their best efforts, some houses continue to burn for weeks as their stockpiles of coal catch fire and are impossible to put out. Hamburg is a changed city when the all-clear sounds early in the morning. Entire city blocks in Eimsbüttel have been levelled, while the neighbourhood of Altona suffers heavy damage. Johann Johansson is finally released from his duties and makes his way back to his family. Johansson's heart drops when he is faced with the smouldering remains of his house, but later learns that his family survived by burrowing into a neighbouring cellar to escape the flames. Others are not so fortunate. Between 1,500 and 2,000 people have been killed, making this raid deadlier than the heaviest Luftwaffe raid on London during the Blitz. Tens of thousands have been rendered homeless, but Kaufmann has explicitly forbidden anyone to leave the city lest they spread rumours of what they have experienced. This will soon have deadly consequences. A pastor in Eimsbüttel recalled how the dense smoke prevented the sun from shining until 3 PM. Everything was wrapped in black smoke, which was so thick that at 9 o'clock in the morning it was still too dark to see anything outdoors. Not until 11 o'clock did it become lighter. However, the cleanup process only lasts until 3:30 PM, when the air raid sirens sound again throughout Hamburg. Rudolf Schurig is in the city centre when the sirens begin blaring. Terror and dismay played across people's faces all over again. Women grabbed their children, men grabbed their wives, and they hurried to the nearest air raid shelter, where whole crowds were gathering. I have never seen the people of Hamburg running in such panic because of an air raid siren. Approaching the city from the North Sea is a formation of B-17 flying fortresses of the USAAF's 8th Air Force. A month earlier, the Americans tried to attack Hamburg, but the raid failed miserably, with 18 aircraft lost for no damage done. This time, American planners are hopeful they will catch the German defences off guard following the RAF's devastating raid. The USAAF is still very inexperienced and only just now scaling up its operations. Bomber Commander Brigadier General Fred Anderson has only been in his post for 3 weeks, but is determined to support the British operation. For the first time in the war, the combined bomber offensive is living up to its name, as both Allied air forces attempt to destroy the same target. Although the USAAF is not using window, Brigadier General Anderson and his staff have devised a plan to confuse the enemy's response. 3 air task forces have taken off from their bases in the UK and are making their way towards the Reich. The first 2 groups of bombers travel together over the North Sea until splitting, roughly 55 miles from the Danish coast. The first group makes for the city of Warnemünde on the Baltic coast to draw Luftwaffe fighters to the north, while the second group heads for the U-boat pens in the city of Kiel. 40 minutes behind is the main force of 123 B-17s from 6 bombardment groups. These bombers will approach Hamburg from the southwest before the different groups attack their respective targets. Attempting precision bombing, the 379th, 303rd and 384th bombardment groups will attack the Blum and Voss shipbuilding yards, while the target of the 91st, 351st and 381st bomb groups is the Klockner air engine factory. The USAAF is also launching diversionary raids by fighter bombers in France and the Low Countries to further strain the German defences. It's an ambitious and risky plan. The Blum and Voss combat wing manages to form up without much trouble, but the group bound for the Klockner factory becomes lost in the summer haze and struggles to create a coherent formation. By the time the bombers have found each other and assembled, the formation is loose, and the bombers are still trying to tighten up the combat boxes when the German coast is sighted at 4 PM. Although the Kiel task force is forced to abort due to issues forming up, significant numbers of Luftwaffe fighters have been diverted to attack the Warnemünde task force. The diversionary attacks in France and the Low Countries also draw off 2 German fighter groups, allowing the Hamburg force a straight shot at the target. Nonetheless, American aviators can see small groups of Bf-109 and FW-190 fighters lingering in the distance, their pilots waiting for more interceptors to join them before attacking. The task force crosses into Germany over the mouth of the Elbe River at 4:15 PM. 14 B-17s have been forced to return to base because of mechanical issues, but no American aircraft have been shot down. While the RAF attack had the cover of darkness, the American force will have to face the brunt of the German anti-aircraft defences in broad daylight. The formations are targeted by flak fire so dense that Walter Davis of the 91st Bombardment Group later said, "You could get out and walk on it." The flak only gets worse the closer the bombers get to Hamburg. For the next 20 minutes, the American airmen are jolted around by nearby flak bursts, while shrapnel rips holes in their B-17's aluminium skin. The 381st Bomb Group's war diary notes that the anti-aircraft fire was the most intense we have ever seen. Despite the blanket of flak fire, no American bombers are shot down as they near the city at 4:35 PM. When the first B-17s reach the outskirts of the city, they are faced with a new problem. The fires from the RAF's raid the previous night have shrouded the area with dense smoke, making it nearly impossible for bombardiers to see their targets. The Blum and Voss shipyards are just barely visible on the edge of the smoke cloud, but the Klockner air engine factory is completely obscured. 2 of the Klockner groups decide to join the bombing run on the shipyards, but the trailing 381st Bomb Group is too far behind to see what is happening, and continues on their assigned heading. If the bombardiers cannot see the targets through the smoke, they will attack any industrial targets they can spot, including civilian workers' housing. The shipyards are still shrouded in smoke, but a small gap in the clouds opens just as the leading groups fly over the target. The bombardiers of the leading 384th Bomb Group release 44,000 pounds of incendiaries at 4:34 PM. The other bomb groups follow and drop a combination of incendiaries and 500-pound bombs. The damage on the ground is mixed, but the flying fortresses score several important hits. Blum and Voss's shipyard foundry is hit and catches fire, which will delay the construction of several U-boats. The Hansa Müll vegetable oil factory is also struck, setting the plant on fire. An oil storage tank is hit and explodes in a fireball, which can be seen by the American airmen. A U-boat shipyard also suffers extensive damage, particularly to the diesel engine works. Finally, the unfinished passenger liner Vaterland takes a direct hit and catches fire. The Vaterland, which was being used as a floating timber store for the shipyards, burns throughout the evening until most of the ship is reduced to ashes. The 5 bomb groups finished their runs by 4:46 p.m. and turned towards their rally point 25 miles east of the city. While the leading groups have been pummeling Hamburg's networks of shipyards and dry docks, the 381st Bomb Group is still 20 minutes behind the rest of the bombers. 6 B-17s have been forced to return to base before the 381st has reached the target, including the group leader. Deputy Leader Captain George Shackley decides to deviate from the intended flight path to catch up with the rest of the groups, and orders his pilots to approach the target from the west rather than the southwest. The 17 B-17s of the 381st arrive over Hamburg as the only aircraft in the sky and facing a storm of flak fire. The same layer of smoke which affected the other groups has only become worse, and the bombardier cannot see the target. Hoping to eventually spot another target through the smoke, Shackley decides to close all bomb bay doors, and the flying fortresses run the gauntlet of flak over Hamburg. No aircraft are shot down, but all but one suffers extensive damage. The rest of the groups turn to the northwest to begin their journey home. Without the cover of nighttime darkness, and now away from Hamburg's flak defences, the fighters of the Luftwaffe locate the withdrawing force and pounce. 11 B-17s, which suffered heavy damage over the city, are now falling out of formation, making them easy targets. All 11 are shot down by Bf-109s and FW-190s, 10 before the Americans reach the North Sea. The 384th Bomb Group suffers more than the rest, losing 5 of its 18 bombers. But the German pilots find the main formation a more formidable obstacle than the lone damaged B-17s. Only 4 bombers are shot down in exchange for 5 Bf-109s and 5 more damaged. The American bombers will cross the English coastline at 7 p.m. before landing back at their bases. The USAAF has lost 15 of the 123 B-17s which took off for Hamburg, an unsustainable casualty rate of 12% for a force which is still learning how to fight in the skies over Europe. Hamburg has been spared the same destruction the RAF brought the night before. Some civilian residential areas have been attacked, but only 20 civilians are killed. Hamburg's U-boat shipbuilding industry has suffered a setback. A second RAF raid against Hamburg has been planned for the night of the 25th to 26th of January, but reconnaissance photographs still show dense clouds of smoke obscuring much of the city. Air Chief Marshal Harris sends 705 bombers to the city of Essen in the Ruhr Valley instead, much to the relief of Hamburg citizens. Window is used again to great success, and only 26 bombers are lost, a sustainable casualty rate of 3.7%, especially considering the Ruhr Valley's extensive anti-aircraft defences. The USAAF keeps up the pressure the following day, and launches maximum effort raids against Hamburg and the city of Hanover. All 6 bomb groups from the previous day are sent against the same targets in Hamburg, but dense clouds make forming up near impossible. Of the 121 B-17s which took off for the city, 54 reach and bomb their targets through smoke. 2 flying fortresses are shot down by German fighters, and 150 civilians are killed by the bombing. Despite more than half of the force being unable to take part in the bombing, those which pressed on have hit a vital target. The Neuhof power station has taken a direct hit, which cuts off 40% of Hamburg's electricity. The raid on Hanover also provides a vital contribution to Operation Gomorrah. The American bombers have successfully bombed the city's motor tyre factories, which caused large fires to spread throughout Hanover. This is exacerbated because much of the city's fire brigade had been dispatched to combat the fires in Hamburg. The bombing in Hanover is so severe that the firemen sent to Hamburg are recalled at a critical moment. An RAF reconnaissance mission during the day of the 27th of July reveals that much of the smoke which has shrouded Hamburg has dissipated. Operation Gomorrah continues, and later that night, Bomber Harris will send up almost 800 aircraft with the express purpose of destroying the rest of the city. This attack will go down as one of the most destructive in the history of warfare, and is known today as the Firestorm Raid. If you'd like to watch part 2 straight away, it's available to watch now on our Patreon at patreon.com/The Operations Room. You can get access to exclusive benefits such as early access to all videos and full series, completely ad and sponsor free.